Check one, two, three.
This event
May I request everyone to please settle down? We'll be starting very shortly. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the public sessions of the Global Technology Summit. For those of you who have rather joined us today and were not there present yesterday, we have a very special video which documents and chronicles the making of GTS and how the Global Technology Summit has evolved since its earlier iterations. May I have the video, please? Thank you.
This event has been an outcome of a productive partnership between the Ministry of External Affairs and Carnegie India. It is aimed at addressing an issue that is increasingly central to international relations, the role and impact of technology.
In 2016, the year that we were founded, Dr. S. Jaishankar, the current External Affairs Minister, had this idea where he said, look, we require some kind of a policy bridge that connects technologists, diplomats, venture capitalists, academics, and experts all under one roof.
AI applications can open new vulnerabilities in nuclear command and control and communications.
India's position is not to overly obsess and demonize AI and look at this only through the prism of safety and trust.
It's for developing countries to not only catch up but to leapfrog more developed countries. We need to be able to leverage the use of emerging technologies.
India's own story is not going to be similar to possibly even China's.
No partnership will be more consequential to the future than that of the United States and India.
We don't want to be closed into someone else's proprietary system. So it is very important for us to support and develop the ecosystem based on our model.
We cannot get the next billion people into the transacting economy unless we close the access barrier.
Unless you have a collaborative conversation, the intelligence across as a network will not emerge.
And the quote of the day for me was, what works at scale is different from scaling what works.
What was born out of a seed of an idea that said that henceforth technology diplomacy is going to take center stage has actually come true.
This summit is an extraordinary event that connects technology trends in India with technology trends from every corner of the globe.
Every time I come here, the discussions are on technology that are very relevant.
I think GTS is more important today than it has ever been in the past.
Competition, innovation, transparency, and empathy. That's the answer to all tech policy problems.
As a wise person once told me that even if technology firms are not interested in geopolitics, geopolitics are certainly very interested in technology.
I think that video does a fantastic job of chronicling the evolution of GTS, but also generally of the geopolitics of technology. Today, I'm delighted to welcome two GTS senior officials of the Ministry of External Affairs of the Government of India. We are so grateful and glad that you could join us today. Also delighted to welcome mid-career officials of the government who are in their training. And today we have an exciting lineup ahead, diving deep into digital public infrastructure, space security, data governance, artificial intelligence, and of course, geopolitics. Unfortunately, the Foreign Secretary was not able to join us today for the morning session. In his place, we have a panel discussion. So yesterday, the two T's, one of which was tariffs, came up a fair bit in several conversations with the External Affairs Minister, with the Commerce Minister. And so we begin with the panel titled Tariffied World T-90. May I please welcome to the stage for this panel Bjorn Conrad, Chief Executive Officer and co-founder, Sinolytics; Evan Feigenbaum, Vice President for Studies, Carnegie Endowment for International Peace; Rosa Balfour, Director, Carnegie Europe; Ashley Tellis, Tata Chair for Strategic Affairs and Senior Fellow, Carnegie Endowment for International Peace; and Shruti Rajagopalan, Senior Fellow, Mercatus Center. This conversation will be moderated by Ambassador Arun Singh, Non-Resident Senior Fellow, Carnegie India. Can I have the video, please? So the floor is all yours.
Thank you. So this is a surprise panel, which I guess is in the fitness of things, because on tariffs, we are being whiplashed by one surprise a day, if not more often. Keeping that in mind, Evan, let me start with you. The US first said that they'll impose high tariffs on Mexico and Canada, then walked back a bit on that. Then they raised tariffs on everybody, and US constructs narratives, so they called it reciprocal tariffs, but no math showed that it was really reciprocal. It was high tariffs. And now suddenly it's been paused on everybody except China. Many US partners said that really it is Chinese overcapacity subsidizing which has brought the world to this stage. And the target should really be China rather than anybody else. So is it finally evolving into a US-China trade war? Is that where we are? Or is something else playing out?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks to GTS. Always good to be back. Is it a US-China trade war? Not really, because the real war now is between President Trump's policies and the markets. That's the real war, because what we've seen over the last several days is this broad liquidation by a lot of market participants of US assets. Anything branded USA, equities, bond yields blowing out, the dollar, and even things that are not risk assets are trading as if they're risk assets. So that's a very different situation, I think, than just saying this is some kind of tariff war between the US and China. And what's more, between the US and China, the tariffs aren't that relevant anymore, because when you're at 145% on one side, 125% on the other side, basically what you have is a two-way trade embargo. And that's essentially what we have now. The administration has articulated not one, not two, not three, but now four, at least, rationales for what they're doing. The first three of which are contradictory, and the fourth of which is new, the China one, is basically gaslighting. And we shouldn't let the Treasury Secretary gaslight us on this. The first rationale was this all about raising revenue, in which case you need high tariffs, but not so high that trade ceases, because then you can't collect any revenue. The second rationale is it's all reshoring. Well, but then you need trade prohibitive tariffs, contradictory to the first objective. The third thing we heard was this is actually about cutting deals. And if it's about cutting deals, then you need to be prepared to actually roll the tariffs back to take the tariffs off, which, by the way, they have not done because they've left the universal 10%. And on top of that, you still have the sectoral tariffs in place. And Mr. Bessent says we may get tariffs on lumber and copper and so on. And so now we have this new rationale. It's all about China. And I'm sorry, it's gaslighting. Because if it had been about China, they would have gone about this differently from the get-go. They would never have tariffed allies in the way they had. And by the way, ask Canada and Denmark, among others, how they feel about the administration's posture toward alliances. So I think what we're in is actually a struggle between the president's policies and the markets. And in that, having worked for a former Treasury Secretary who dealt with a financial crisis in 2008, I would just say I would not bet on Mr. Trump.
Yeah. Thanks, Evan. So Rosa, listening to Evan, it seems we don't know what the US objective is as they're playing out these tariffs. Now, from the European perspective, how do you see the Europeans reacting to what's happening? Tariffs imposed on them, reduced a bit, but still high on steel, aluminum, automobiles. So how do you see the European reaction playing out?
Well, actually, with a certain amount of composure, I would say. I think Europeans have stopped divining what the strategy actually is. And had Trump placed this in the context of a US-China rivalry, it would have imposed stark choices on Europeans. But because it's been conducted in a way where the rationality is not clear, Europeans have really had to focus on, finding an agreement. And in the end, there was an agreement. They did not. So the EU has quite a toolbox. Huh? I mean, the transatlantic economy is worth $9.5 trillion, 16 million jobs. So it's a two-way thing. The EU does have the tools to respond to a trade war. They have been preparing the toolbox for several months. But there were dissonant voices about how hard to hit back. And therefore, the net result was composure in the face of the tariffs, which gave the EU the time for Trump to step back without facing his ire as the Chinese did. There was an interview in the Financial Times of the commissioner, the president of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. She said, we can do this, we can do that, we have several tools. In the meantime, we're going to start reaching out to other partners, and that's what we've seen in India here. If there's going to be a trade war between the US and China, well, Europe can start reaching out to other countries. It has 72 free trade agreements around the world. It is now accelerating talks with India. It's also starting talks with a number of other countries in Asia, Malaysia, Philippines, UAE. Just yesterday there was a phone call. So there's a lot of activity to try and hold back and find other sources of trade agreements.
Okay, thanks. Bjorn, I'll come to you. So you watch China very closely, and whatever be the US rationale or lack of it, at the moment the focus of action seems to be more on China. How do you see the Chinese reacting to it and the strategies they are putting in place?
Thanks, Arun. I think first point to notice and to highlight is that perhaps in contrast to many other parts of the world, China was not blindsided by this. China has been preparing for this fight for years, right? They knew this would be coming at some point. They've been meticulously building the toolbox, sharpened the instruments, written the playbook step by step, and they're now following it. They're also following the playbook step by step in almost, especially in contrast to all the excitement that Trump gives us, in almost boring predictability. Actually makes us as China watchers look really, really good at the moment because it's so easy to anticipate what China's going to do next. It's all written down, it's all in the book. And what are they playing? What cards are they playing? I think China at the moment has like 2 active cards plus a wild card. And I'm actually not even counting import tariffs on US goods because I don't think they scare pretty much anyone really, really significantly, perhaps except a couple of soybean farmers in the Midwest. But that's not a real card that China has. Always knew that they don't have it. So they have 2 other cards that they sharpen. First card is make life really, really difficult for US companies in the Chinese market, right? And that is a significant card. It does hurt. And they do so by kind of putting them on one of their 3 sanctions lists, but perhaps even more importantly, by kind of needling them with antitrust investigations, with cybersecurity reviews, these kind of things. So lots of tools around to do that. So first on my list would be watch Apple, see what happens there, Starbucks perhaps, and politically ultimately very interestingly, Tesla, right? So all of those could be in the mix. Second card, in the long term, much more significant from my point of view, export controls on raw materials, on critical minerals. And I don't think it has really sunk in how big that card actually is, especially on heavy rare earth minerals, or heavy rare earth elements that are basically used and needed for everything that China has a very strong hold on, and kind of needed for, I don't know, everything from permanent magnets to sputter targets for semiconductor production to lasers to optics to, I don't know, MRI applications, these kind of things. So everything. Yes, of course, the US has, with Mountain Pass, they have kind of minerals also to be mined, but those are light rare earths, right? And it's not heavy, and heavy is still in China. So perhaps I just mentioned the wild card that is left as a final point, and that is China's hold over US Treasury bonds. And 760 billion, not as much as a couple of years ago, but still significant, and we know how powerful that can be. So all these cards on the table. The wild card, I think China is kind of conveniently placed at the edge of the table just for everyone to see that it's there, but not quite ready to play it yet.
And the bond market has been reacting in a certain way.
Yeah, we've seen how sensitive this really is and how powerful that card is. Yeah.
And other than that, make life difficult for US business in China and cram down on some strategic resources and minerals. So that's so Ashley, coming to you, based in Washington, how are you assessing how India has responded to the Trump tariffs, especially as they've applied, while President Trump himself and others have positively spoken about the India relationship or the relationship with the Prime Minister, but always very, very critical of the tariffs. India is the tariff king and other things. So how have you assessed the Indian reaction?
So thanks, Arun, and of course it's great to be back. I'll make 2 points. The first is we have to resist the temptation of thinking that there is a grand strategy with respect to the way we are using tariffs as a punitive instrument. The president has very strong impulses. He's had very strong views about the global trading system for many decades, and now he is finally in a position to act on those views that he's had for a long time. So in some sense, the actions of the last several weeks are consistent with complaints that he had, which predate the specifics that people have, some legitimate concerns about. So resist the temptation to think of this as a master plan that is unfolding in a sort of systematic way. Having said that, and this is the second point, the targets with respect to India are very specific. And again, they go back to the experience of the first term. With India, the target is increasing market access. And that's really all it is. Now, they tried in the first term to negotiate a package that would address some non-tariff barriers, but mostly tariff barriers. That did not come to conclusion. And so where he's picked up is literally where he left off. And so India, I think, has assessed his objective correctly and is now attempting to address those concerns that he has about market access by, in essence, putting a package that says, on a series of line items, India is willing to drastically reduce tariffs in the hope that there will be some reciprocal benefits that come to India. Ideally, those reciprocal benefits come quickly, immediately, in the context of this 90-day period. In the worst case, they hang out there, waiting to be implemented. And to my mind, it is that asymmetry in time that is going to cause the biggest political problems for the government of India. But at least with respect to India, there is a sort of a logic because it is precise and we know what the objectives are. On the broader objectives of the tariff strategy, I completely agree with what Evan said. I mean, there are too many cross-cutting and contradictory impulses to call it a genuine strategy.
Shruti, you're an academic. From your vantage and somewhat detached points, do you feel that the real world actors have gone mad?
Thank you, Arun. I don't think anyone is detached from the global trade system. So, to that extent, not so much. So the way we normally talk about trade in this room is trade politics. So all of you have been talking about reactions, and you really mean the reaction of a government leader or a minister and so on, right? I'm an economist, and when we think about international trade, we talk about reactions of people who actually put things in a bag, put it on a ship, and send it to each other. And anyone in this room who's filled out a GST form or a customs folio might be familiar with what we call the HSN classification. This is the harmonized system or nomenclature that we follow the world over. So for the uninitiated who've been fortunate never to fill this out, the first 2 digits will be, it's a long number. So the first 2 digits will be something like cereal and grain for rice, right? The next 2 digits will specify that it's rice. The next 2 digits will be wholly milled rice or semi-milled rice. The next 2 digits will say polished or unpolished, and then so on and so forth. And you have, if we start calculating, I had to make a note of this, we have 99 chapters, we have 1,228 4-digit classifications, 5,387 6-digit classifications, and over 17,000 10-digit classifications. So when we say reaction, we mean reaction across these 17,000 different line items that now people need to figure out a new supply chain. And these things just don't happen by magic, right? because supply chains, I mean, I grew up in Delhi about half a mile from here. You all know how far Chandni Chowk is. My mother is still buying her spices from the same place in Khari Bauli that her mother bought spices from. And if I request something specific to take back to the US, I'm pretty sure the same shop will send it to me. So our family has not changed its supply chain. So these things take a long time. So this idea that we can just upend the system and suddenly iPhones will be made somewhere else is entirely unrealistic. You know, you requested me to do this about 20 minutes before the session. I started counting the number of items for iPhones. I stopped at 50 because I don't have time. But in the HSN classification, just the parts of iPhones is more than 50. So this is going to take a while for people to readjust.
So what you're saying is that it'll be difficult to adjust. There'll be breakdowns in supplies. Prices will go up. Some products may not be available, and that's how this is going to play out. So coming to the next point, in the meantime, even as all this is playing out, people will also be working out alternative strategies, either looking at different markets, regional strategies, or technology development strategies, so that you look at a different pattern of production distribution, production sharing, some sectoral agreements. So, Evan, how do you see US working out a strategy in the coming period?
Oh, I think the US will largely be out of that. And I think the reality is this, I mean, where we're heading, the danger of where we're heading is that US industry ends up behind a high tariff wall, while the rest of the world is not necessarily behind that American tariff wall. The US is not going to export expensive US-made products to the rest of the world. And so what's going to happen is there may continue to be a lot of the activity that you're describing among Europe, among Asia, and if I may say so, among India, but with the United States largely on the outside. And it gets to two questions. One is about the United States, and the other is about India. On the United States, I mean, if you take, I rarely disagree with my colleague Ashley Thomas, but if you take the kind of story that you told, which is that we're going to head for a period of deal making between the United States and others, that may be the case, but we need to ask, first, why is that deal making happening? And second, what kind of deals are we going to get? And third, therefore, is that the end of the story? And the reason it's happening is not because of a push for lowering, as you put it, market access barriers. It's because, frankly, Mr. Trump's policies are wrecking people's economies. And they're wrecking the global economy. Why are these, I think he said, was it 70 countries or 75 countries? They're calling me up. He said, quote unquote, they're kissing my ass. They're coming to make deals. Why are they coming to make deals? They're coming to make deals because he's wrecking their economies. And so when you're bleeding, you stanch the bleeding. Okay? But what kind of deals? You can't negotiate 75 deals in the time that we have. I mean, I worked for Bob Zoellick at one point. Bob Zoellick did the US-Australia Free Trade Agreement. That thing took years between Zoellick and Mark Vail. Okay? So the kind of deals we're going to get are not across and behind the border deals. These are going to be purchase deals. They're going to be at the border purchase agreements. And at the border purchase agreements, you can do that, but that's got nothing to do with changing the structural impediments, either in the United States or that face American business elsewhere. So the way we talk about market access is important, because market access can mean market access for American companies to sell stuff, or it can mean the market access that I think India wants, which is American companies to invest here, make in India, make jobs. So if I were sitting in India, I would be surveying a landscape that's a little bit different. For example, I might ask a question about the RCEP agreement and the problem with being on the outside of RCEP, where between Vietnam and China, for example, now there's basically a 0% tariff wall on a lot of things. I understand why it happened. I understand the political debate here. I understand that India was very focused on protecting what it had, but the problem with protecting what you had is you're not as oriented on what you could have in the future. And in the landscape that's shaping up, that may lead an India to a different set of conclusions about how it wants to reach deals, not with the United States, which is going to be this limited set of at-the-border purchase stuff, but to potentially, I would think it might be in your interest to be more open to much more ambitious deals of the kind that everybody but the United States is still interested in doing.
So,
And
Rosa,
that's where the Europe piece becomes interesting again.
Rosa, what are the alternative strategies that Europe is looking at?
Yeah, I mean, Europe has always put, in terms of reaching a deal with the United States, buy more LNG, buy more military kits. There's a spending surge in defense. But actually, the longer-term strategy is build, foreign free trade agreements with third countries, build relationships with third countries, and go global. And we've seen this. This is after 15 years in which the European Union has actually been quite introverted. All of a sudden, they're going global. Europe has done very well out of the free trading system. Europe's economy is deeply embedded into international trade and interdependence. And we saw in the Brexit years that actually Europe is willing to pull out its claws to protect its single market. So it's going to do that, and it's going to think long term in those issues, and short term in terms of finding something that will suit Trump's appetite. But that is where it's going. It's going to look for partnerships to think about modernizing WTO or finding new ways to reach agreements, to work on shared principles, and that's what it's going to try and do.
Beyond, for China, other than causing pain on US and US companies, what is the alternative strategy that you see emerging from there?
No, I think that trade flow diversion from away from the US is, I think, one of the most fundamental, most structural things that come out of this trade flows from China to other markets in the rest of the world. And I think it's going to be very significant. You mentioned RCEP. I think that's one of the arenas where there's going to play out quite heavily. But at the same time, especially for technologically more advanced products that China is now also competitive in, and they want to export, it's also not going to be a totally easy game. Many markets, India, Europe included, are worried about this and are not going to be kind of standing there open arms and welcoming Chinese products in. And China, from a Chinese perspective, China knows this really well. And I'm kind of also China always surprises. I'm also surprised how fast they are moving on managing this problem. I think, everyone is talking about the phone call that has not happened, which is between Xi and Trump, right? I think few people are talking about the even more astonishing phone call that did happen on Tuesday between Ursula von der Leyen and Chinese Prime Minister Li Qiang, where they very clearly talked about kind of managing this new situation and even going into the direction that kind of was not on the table, anywhere near the table only a couple of weeks ago, talking about a compromise on EV tariffs and kind of replacing the European tariffs with a minimal price, for example. That's astonishing and fast and not open-ended and not sure where it goes, but the dynamic is really fast.
Ashley, again, based in Washington, as you're looking at India's evolving strategies, many have said that how India is looking at its trade agreements today is very, very different from what it has done in the past. So how are you assessing that?
So there are several strands that I want to tie together and respond in part to Evan's argument. The Indian problem is a unique problem, but it is embedded in a larger complaint. And that unique problem is, how does one create specific openings for the United States, given the decisions India made from 2017 onwards with respect to managing China? The Indian government reached the conclusion in 2017 or thereabouts that India was subjected to significant Chinese dumping. And the way to deal with that challenge of Chinese dumping was to essentially raise tariffs. Now, unfortunately, India could not find a legal solution that allowed it to target its solution to China alone. And so what they ended up doing was creating a broad brush solution that affected everyone, including the United States. Now, the Chinese learned to live with the Indian constraints because it was soonly followed by geopolitical crises and so on and so forth that made the Indian actions essentially accounting errors in the broader scheme of things. But the United States did not look so nonchalantly at the collateral impact of Indian actions. And so since the first Trump term, the grievance has been, we need to get India to give us this differential treatment because we don't care about what your rationale for the imposition of tariffs was. We only care about the impact on our interest. And therefore, in the first Trump term, they came up with a list of items, some of which were actually legacy items that go back to Bob Zelik's conversations with India in the early 2000s, especially things relating to some agricultural items, right? So now what India is doing, given that it is at the receiving end of some very punitive measures, is looking at a targeted response. And the targeted response is essentially, we will bring down merchandise tariffs. Now, there is a bigger problem. And the bigger problem is what are the general equilibrium effects of the second order consequences? Because it's not just a bilateral game between the United States and India. Will there be actually opportunities for India if there is a differential tariff rate that is maintained on India's competitors? I mean, this is the point that Piyush has been making in the last few days to the consternation of people in Beijing. We don't know the answer to that. As Shruti pointed out, we are not in a world where we are simply trading finished goods from destination A to destination B. So even if there is a solution that involves India, but there are continuing tariffs on inputs and intermediate goods coming from countries outside of China, what is going to be the impact on Indian competitiveness and India's ability to play a useful role in the global trading system, right? These are all big questions for which we don't have answers.
Okay.
And until this thing shakes out, we will not be able to say anything with confidence.
Absolutely. So Shruti, given the current situation, do you think India can derive some competitive advantage from the fact that many of its potential trading rivals may have higher tariffs against their products?
Yes and no. We have to dramatically reduce our tariffs. So I agree with Ashley that we need to send a targeted signal to the United States, but there's a serious problem of tariff inversion based on all our inputs, right? So the US is our largest trading partner on the export side, but China and Asian countries are our largest trading partners on the import side. So all our export competitiveness, as Ashley mentioned, is completely short if we don't dramatically reduce tariffs or, as Evan said, join the RCEP or find some other systematic solution such that we can become the place, the trusted place for assembly or shipping or something like that. So I think irrespective of what the rest of the world does, India must reduce its tariffs. And I think what will happen globally is, I mean, your top line tariff is 125 or 145 or whatever the posturing is tomorrow, but it'll be like license permit, Raj, right? So you'll have an extra 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you'll start working in all the exceptions. You already have stuff for semiconductors and pharma. So we'll go back to a very cronyist way of doing things, and you'll have to strike deals one by one. But still the signal you got to send to the world when it comes to inputs and the signal to your own manufacturers so that they have export competitiveness is to have low certain tariffs. So my advice to policymakers in India is pick a number. It should ideally be a single digit, preferably low, but maybe a high single digit number across the board for most things.
All right. So we'll now do, given the time constraint, a rapid fire round, half a minute each. So the question now is, what is the pain threshold that each society has to deal with the consequences of what's playing out? So Evans, what is going to be the pain threshold for US and for the Trump administration?
It's not knowable because it's really a political question, not an economic question. And, most people thought the president reversed course because of the bond market. So you could say that's the pain point. But of course, then the president came out the next day and said, oh, the bond market had nothing to do with it. So if the bond market had nothing to do with it, then number one, why'd he do it? But number two, it means he's oblivious to what's happening when bond yields explode. That's a problem in and of itself. So I think the answer to the question is going to be political. And it's going to be at what point does the administration generally and the president personally think they're paying a price with the electorate? And the administration doesn't really care about most of the electorate. It's the part of the electorate that is most supportive of them. And that's not farmers and ranchers, because we discovered what happened last time was farmers and ranchers paid a big price, and they went out and voted for him again anyway, twice more. So it's other parts of the electorate that are not the MAGA base, but that made the difference for him. So I would watch kind of reactions to inflation, consumer behavior, and the bond market, because the advisors care about it. But I really think it's a political question, not an economic one, and it's entirely domestic in the United States.
No, sure. So Rosa, given the political churning in Europe, what will be the pain threshold in Europe to push back on tariffs and other trade measures from the US?
Yeah, I mean, politics in Europe are volatile, and I could spend the next hour talking about that. But that is one problem. And of course, it can happen in a major country that there is a volatile political situation, and that could upend the whole of the EU response. But the other thing really is Europe's economy is not in good shape. And in this context, Europe needs to really double down on deepening the single market to make it attractive for global markets. And that's not an easy task. It's been on the cards for a long time, and there have been a lot of political obstacles to creating a banking union, to creating a capital markets union, but that is actually what's needed to make sure that Europe's economy can compete with these challenges.
Okay. And beyond, how do you see China's capacity to bear pain and push back? As one of the Chinese statements said, fight till the end.
Exactly. No, yeah, and that points to the exactly the right factor here. I mean, if you start your day like I do, kind of reading Chinese newspapers, you discover the language is enormously strong on kind of sacrifice that needs to be made, endurance, kind of to win that fight, and kind of really kind of also kind of mobilizing public opinion around that. And I think it kind of on balance with China's ability to do that and kind of creating a very high pain threshold in the population, I think China has an asset there, kind of on balance over kind of an advantage perhaps over others, but also not unlimited, because COVID crisis has shown there is also limits to pain thresholds also in the Chinese population.
Ashley, so do you see India needing to bear pain or use this moment to carry out some needed changes and, in a way, charm President Trump into accommodating India's needs?
Well, I hope that India follows Shruti's advice, because I think for its own sake, a lower tariff rate is in India's own interest. But I think in the bilateral space, we are going to have a test very, very quickly, because India is essentially putting on the table large concessions on merchandise. The US, if it provides a reciprocal concessions, so suppose we have reciprocal negotiation. If it provides reciprocal concessions, it'll probably be at the tail end of the process. So in a sense, we're asking India to bear costs upfront while we provide benefits downstream. Now, will the politics in this country permit that? Will Indian exporters and Indian business tolerate that kind of a solution? Is the Prime Minister willing to take the political costs of selling that? These are going to be very big questions and not easy questions.
So you're saying be patient and come out a winner at the end?
Well, you have to come out a winner soon if this deal is to stick to begin with. But even apart from the deal, as Shruti said, you make these decisions for your own sake and not simply because we are turning the heat on you.
All right. And Shruti, final word to you, half a minute. What's your advice to everyone? How to bring the world to sanity?
I think of pain threshold in terms of GDP per capita. We should not be delusional. We're at about 2,200. China is 6 times richer than us. South Korea is about 15 times richer than us. EU is about 30 times richer than us. And the United States is about 33 times richer than us. So that's the pain threshold. We have 1 billion people living at sub-Saharan levels on food rations. I don't think there is much room in India to play around and deal with this, few months at a time. India just needs to do broad-based reforms for its export competitiveness. And I doubt there's any way out of it at this point.
Thank you. So I think the takeaway from this is we are all in for a wild ride. We don't know what's going to happen. Hang in there. It'll eventually work out. So thank you very much. So thank you very much. And I request all of you to give the panel a big hand because they stepped up at the last minute.
Thank you, dear speakers. May I request the audience to please settle down? Our next panel is our next panel is very aptly titled Guardians of the Galaxy, Space Security Norms and Partnerships. For this, I have the honor of welcoming to the stage Marjolijn van Dielen, Space Envoy, Special Envoy for Space, European External Action Service, my apologies, Ambassador Anupam Ray, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of India to the Conference on Disarmament, welcome sir, and Anirudh Sharma, Chief Executive Officer, Digantara. Moderating this session is Konak Bandari, Fellow, Technology and Society Program, Carnegie, India. Can I have the video, please? Over to you, Konak.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this panel on space security norms and partnerships. So we're on the cusp of a new space race, and some people might say we're already in the middle of a space race. This new space race is essentially marked by increasing collaboration and also competition among private space actors, but nations as well. We're also seeing increasing focus on certain areas, for example, lunar resource extraction. We're looking at outer space, deep space exploration, and also commercial space tourism as well. So those are some areas which we're looking at increasingly in this new era of space race. This is noticeably distinct from when we look at the previous space eras, which were there in the Cold War, which was marked by projects of national prestige. This is a bit different now. So essentially, we're seeing a buildup of space assets because the new space race is marked largely by commercial prospects, commercial considerations, and economic growth. So we're seeing the buildup of space assets in a big way. Now, these space assets are essentially, dual use in nature. They also have civilian purpose, but they also have a military application as well. And so they can also be used for hostile reasons as well. So going ahead, we're seeing now these space assets being integrated into the space arsenal of major space economies, but we're also seeing them become integral to the carrying of the statecraft as well. So essentially what this means is that we're on the cusp of astropolitics, which is increasing geopolitical contestation in space. And what that has led to is that we're seeing the potential for escalation of conflict in space as well. At the same time, we're seeing an increasing commercialization as well. So a lot of private space entrepreneurs have essentially developed space technologies in a rapid way. And as usual, as is the case, we have seen how sort of the law struggles to keep pace with the technology. And so international space law norms have still not clearly defined the contours of how do we sort of go about looking at this new space tech. So this panel is essentially going to be about looking at, where do we stand on space security? What role do multilateral norms have when it comes to sort of looking at space security? What are the areas of differences as well between all the nations as well? And number two, we'll also look at the role of private space, like all the private space entrepreneurs, private space enterprise, when it comes to this area as well. So with that, the first question, I'd like to go to Ambassador van Dielen. Ambassador van Dielen, I wanted to know a little bit about the EU vantage point on space security and the correlation that has with the space safety, sustainability. We are seeing increasingly a large amount of cybersecurity attack on satellites. We're seeing, rendezvous and proximity operations being also happening. So the point is that space, which was supposed to be a global commons, a safe space, is not that safe anymore. So the EU has also, increasingly acknowledged this. They've come out with a strategy in 2023 when it comes to, I think, space security and defense. So where is the EU exactly on this topic of space security? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Konak, and thanks very much for having me. It's really a great pleasure to be in this fantastic conference. Indeed, as you say, the EU realized some 4 years ago that space is a strategic domain. Before that, we were very much focused on the civilian use of a civilian space program. You know, the EU space program, Galileo, Copernicus, they're very well-known entities, and they were designed to be free, full, and open. And that world no longer is. We've came to realize that by deciding jointly with the 27 member states that we see space as a strategic domain. Out of that landmark realization came the strategy you mentioned, came out in 2023, which is a strategy for space security and defense. So very much separate from what we do on the civilian side with the EU space program that is managed by the European Commission. And this strategy has 5 pillars. I'll briefly go through them. The first of them is to have a common understanding between EU member states of the threats that we face in space. And we do that in a classified way together with the services of our member states. We have a space threat landscape, so to make sure we have a common understanding of what we face. And what you mentioned is, of course, very much visible on that. It's the cyber, it's the potential use of RPOs, but it's also ASATs, which create a lot of debris and which could target our satellites. It's also a lack of transparency by some actors that doesn't give us confidence. So that's a starting point. Second element is the resilience and protection of the EU space program. So this very much relates to making sure we have launch capacities, that we have a vibrant industry, and also that we can develop future programs. Third one is related to our response to space threats. In order to respond, you need to be able to detect a threat, to characterize it, and then to also attribute before you can do a diplomatic response. EU being a civilian organization, we would always have a civilian response, a diplomatic response. Any military activity, if there were any, it will be through member states, but not through the EU as an organization. Then fourth is the use of space for security and defense. As I said, the programs in the past have been very much designed for civilian use. We know that security actors and defense actors make use of the data, but those were not designed for them. So we're working to get user requirements for military organizations in the EU and also civil protection organizations. And we've already embarked on 2 new elements of the EU space program. One is governmental SATCOM, the IRIS² program, for which the contract was signed last December. And we're working on a pilot for an Earth observation governmental service. So that is really also a deviation from the past. And the 5th one is partnering for norms, rules, and principles of responsible behavior. Because the normative basis that we have is too limited, and we really feel we need to work in the UN context in order to make sure that we have international agreements on how to keep space secure, and we do that together with our partners. So priority for us is now to implement the strategy. This is one thing of getting there with 27 member states. So we now is focus on the implementation, and for me in particular, it's on the normative side and it's on the partner side.
Thank you, Ambassador. Ambassador Ray, if I may come to you for a second. You know, the UN has remained the forum for any multilateral debate on space safety and security. How do you look at the way India has viewed the discussions which have happened at the UN level, and how has India participated in those same discussions?
Thank you, Konak. Firstly, thank you to Rudra and to Carnegie India for organizing this and for inviting us. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Ambassador Venkatesh Verma somewhere in the audience. He's been a mentor to me and to many of us in this field. And very privileged to be on the panel with Mario, and the EU is one of our most important partners. And to someone like Anirudh, the future of India and my pension depend on how well he does as a space startup. The regulatory conversation on space at the international level is a very old one. At the current moment, the only regulatory framework is a cluster of treaties and understandings built around something called the Outer Space Treaty, which was negotiated in 1967. In 1967, there were 400 objects in space. And this was about 7 or 8 years after Sputnik. The entire use of space was for military purposes. Civilian use of space only came later. Today, we have 30,000 objects, in space, any number of say, what we call space junk, lots of debris. The number of space launches is at an unprecedented high. The cost of space launch has come down by 90%. Satellites today are small satellites, and you have constellations. So what it does is that it creates a regulatory challenge which the OST is inadequate to tackle. Now, since the origins of space, of all space programs are, excepting the Indian one, I must add, are essentially military in nature. So the OST is a very peculiar treaty. When it came up in 1967, 14 of its provisions of its 17 articles are more or less drawn from the Antarctica Treaty. Okay, and the rest of them have some WMD, weapons of mass destruction obligations. Today, in space, you have thousands of satellites. Many of them are dual use. Okay, civilian space use has exploded. Space capacity is not universal. There are about 190 countries in the world. About a dozen have any meaningful space capacity in the sense that they have all the verticals of space capacity: launch, satellite fabrication, satellite operation, satellite applications, and SSA. So there are multiple conversations going on. How do you reconcile the military aspects with the civilian aspects? The space economy today is about according to McKinsey, about $630 billion. It's expected to go up to around $2 trillion in the next 10 years. When the Outer Space Treaty came up, there was no possibility of, say, asteroid mining, of human habitation in space, manufacturing in space, energy production in space. Okay, and these are very real possibilities now. So how do you reconcile these two? So the Indian approach is that we participate in these conversations. We are conscious of the fact that we would like to, that we have space ambition, and we have the record in some ways of say, how would I say, of delivering on many of these aspirations in space. A number of conversations are underway, but broadly they can be divided into what we call the Geneva track and the Vienna track. The Vienna track deals with safety issues, and the Geneva track deals with security issues. So what we have in Vienna there's a series of principles have come up called the long-term sustainability guidelines, which look at how you avoid debris and how you sort of move in space without space traffic management, essentially. Okay. So these are the issues there. On the military side, there are essentially, the fiercest arms race currently underway is in space. If you take out space capacities, you go back to being a 20th century military. It's a space capacity today that determines where you stand in terms of military ability. It's the strongest enabler today. So that produces a number of issues. I can come back to them in my next answer. But we are determined to be a part of the solution and not the problem. We want to work more with partners like Mariolin and the European Union, all other players in space, and also to take into account the interests of our growing private sector and our national space agency, ISRO. Thank you.
Ambassador, if I have a small follow-up. Essentially, the thing is that the perception seems to be that the UN could do more to perhaps catch up with the evolution and the breakthroughs in the tech. So the international space law has not really kept up pace when it comes to the evolution of breakthroughs in technologies in space. How effective is the UN in tracking all these breakthroughs, which you mentioned about, a 90% drop in the cost launch and all these issues? How effective has the UN been as a forum for not just discussions on regulations, but also on tracking the tech as well?
Yes, you cannot consider space in isolation. It's one of the emerging technologies that's coming out, whether it's biotech or bioengineering and so on, artificial intelligence, robotics, cyber. Space is one of this clutch of emerging technologies that come in. All of them face regulatory challenges. The AI regulation, there's no way that you can anticipate what's going to come up, because you don't know whether autonomy is going to happen, or whether when it's going to happen, or what it looks like. Similarly, in space, it's very likely that we'll be it's a stated ambition. The US government, for instance, its stated objective is colonization of the solar system. It's in one of their space policy directives. Okay, I mean, how do you approach something like that? There have been attempts in the past to say designate space as a province of all humanity and so on. It's similar to what was done in the Antarctica Treaty when the concept of global commons was terrestrial. Okay, so we are facing challenges on a scale, I think, which is unprecedented in humanity. The only thing I can think of is of the papal bull of the 15th century, which divided the world into two, half for Spain and half for Portugal. Okay, so it's a challenge on that scale, and the UN is the best platform we have. The UN is only as good as the resources that are available to it, or what the member states bring to bear. It cannot outrun that.
So Anirudh, I mean, as Ambassador mentioned earlier on, space was something which was largely the sole preserver of the military activities a long time back. Lately, we have seen some civilian aspects as well, but commercial considerations into space is a new thing altogether. How have you gone about building capabilities on that front in essentially what seems to be an area where there's been largely sovereign functioning? How has Digantara gone about sort of approaching that?
Thank you, Konark, for having me here. So to answer the question around how has commercial sector evolved itself, and then the navigating of policies and building something in commercial space mainly happened because of the innovation, and the cost of launching to space has become much cheaper these days. So having said that, space was one sector that was mostly military in nature when it started. But then we have more than 70% satellites in orbit today that are purely commercial. Out of 13,000 active satellites at this point in time, more than 7,000 or even 8,000 are just commercial satellite players operating constellation of satellites. This change was not expected in the past. So the regulations did not change drastically from back then to now with all the innovation that is happening. So I see private sector to be more like a tech enabler and not a policy driver for a lot of things. So we just help towards accelerating a lot of technologies that are necessary for both civil and military applications. For instance, when we started Digantara, we started this company as a company that focuses on tracking objects in space and building a catalog that can support commercial space operations purely. But we didn't know the fact that military has a huge application around this when we started. Today, most of the work that we do, probably more than 80% that we do is for military, not for commercial use case, by tracking every single thing that is happening in orbit. That is also because of being in the right time at the right place. With all the geopolitics going around the world, space has become more imperative in terms of sovereignty, national infrastructure as well. So we support most military agencies today balancing out on, like at the policy level, by helping them track adversary satellite activities, and also support in a lot of military applications that can be derived out of space. The last part is the fact that space itself today is going towards becoming more and more commercial in nature. What was science fiction in the past is no more science fiction. We're talking about commercial human space flights and a lot of in-orbit activity, which means there is a need for infrastructure, just like we have one for aviation sector, which means somebody has to build for a solution to understand every single space activity. So that's something that we are focusing on today, because going further down, when we have around 60, 70,000 satellites, this will be more important from the standpoint of operations. And like Ambassador Ray mentioned, there is no way you can draw boundaries in space. So everything is more like a common good, and whoever launches first gets that particular orbit. So it's called the orbit carrying capacity. So like given that fact, with GEO and LEO, there are different dynamics in nature. For GEO, we have more like an orbit carrying capacity concept. Inherently, people think space is infinite, but it is pretty much finite. The usable space is pretty much finite. So the number of satellites that are going up is significantly high. In just last 3 years, we've seen 6-fold increase in satellites, which means there needs to be an understanding where a public organization works very closely with private organization to accelerate the technology development to support the needs and the growth of this industry, and that's what we are supporting mostly.
How does that happen in practice on Earth? How do you actually go about working with the public organizations? What does that look like on the ground?
So when we started initially, it was very difficult to create awareness around something like space situational awareness, which was purely military. And like even at this point in time, a lot of countries view space situational awareness just to be military in nature. Like Europe today focuses more on civilian use cases of space, but America and Russia, China sees more military in nature. So when we work with these organizations, we balance out their needs. So for example, today for India, we're working with both civil and military use cases. With ISRO, we are focusing mostly on providing collision avoidance and tracking of objects. But for defense, it's mostly towards understanding adversary satellite activity. The same thing is happening in the US as well. US maintains the largest catalog today of space objects, but the catalog is not enough because it only tracks 30,000 objects, while we have more than 900,000 objects. So our role comes into picture in two levels. One, in ensuring we work with the policymakers, where they can regulate something like air traffic management, but for space, by having a single agency who is buying all this data and maintaining a catalog, providing service through this regulatory arm for all the satellite operators who are launching satellites to space. Just the best example is UK at this point in time. UK does this through their regulatory arm, where if any satellites are to be launched from UK, they provide all the services that are associated with space situational awareness through the policy agency or the regulatory arm, who predominantly purchases data from commercial companies like us. The same thing we've seen in other sectors like marine domain awareness, aviation sectors, where we have precedents from the past. We're following the same footprints, but here the only complexity is we can't draw that virtual borders as well, which is where we have to be global in nature. Even if we are a commercial company based out of India, we today operate in multiple countries, follow the rules of the local country that we are operating, and then providing services accordingly.
Ambassador Van Deelen, you mentioned in your answer the 5 key priorities of the EU when it comes to space security. So my question here is, what does that look like in practice in terms of the implementation? When we're talking about sort of application of those particular pillars, how do you go about engaging in different forums? So we have the UN, but we also have the open-ended working group as well on the prevention of arms race in outer space. So what does it look like when you're engaging at different forums? And my second part of the question is, where are the area of differences with different countries? Do different regions have different vantage points? Do they have different opinions on what space security looks like?
Okay, thanks for that question. I think the last one I need to think about a little bit, and I don't think it's a regional approach. It may be country-specific more than anything else. If there is, but in general, I have an idea that there's a very good perception across EU member states of the threats that we face and the need for action. And we see that by the very large support for the resolutions that were adopted in this respect in the first committee in New York for a couple of years now. And a process that we had on a previous open-ended working group on norms, rules, and principles of responsible behavior in outer space, which included discussions between member states on threats and on different threat perceptions. And it included representatives from civil society and from the private sector. And this very inclusive dialogue, I think, is key to have if you want to get anything done. What it looks like otherwise, I think my good friend Anupam set it out very eloquently. What we do in Vienna and in Geneva, in Vienna focusing much more on safety, so on SST, space traffic management. Those are really important topics to get done. The EU looks more at regional approaches to space traffic management, but we very much agree that we need some sort of international framework in order to deal with who goes where at what time and the right of way, etc., that we have in all other areas of transportation. On the security side in Geneva, I very much meet with Anupam every time I'm there. We were both together in the first session of a new series of open-ended working groups that took place actually the past week in Geneva. We both came from there. And unfortunately, in that session, we really saw geopolitics play out. In 5 days, these diplomats did not manage to agree on an agenda even for this 4-year process. And that was because there was one country that was blocking the agenda. All other countries there were ready to agree. So the current geopolitical context makes it very difficult to come to agreements, especially to come to agreements fast. I think the way we did arms control in the last decades is not how we'll be able to do it now. And that means we're really looking for partners. So we do outreach when we go to these meetings. We speak to as many people as we can, both like-minded countries and not so like-minded countries. For diplomats, it's key to be in touch with everyone, to understand concerns, to listen to them, and to be able to explain our views and positions. But more focusedly, we have a number of dialogues on space and space security with a few key countries. And I'm really hoping India will be next. So far, we have one with the US and with Japan, with NATO. We have a space security dialogue with Korea and Australia. And for many other countries, we have space as an agenda item in broader political and security and defense dialogues. But I think this topic, given its importance, really merits a direct dialogue between our two countries. So that's why I'm here. I'm hoping we can set that up.
Thank you, Ambassador Van Dieren. Ambassador Ray, just a similar question for you as well. You mentioned that India has a knack for delivering at these multilateral fora. Can you give an example of how India has managed to bring together stakeholders, or what is the specific role India chooses to play in these multilateral fora?
Well, thank you. I mean, before I come to that, I think Mayolin, my good friend, has raised some very interesting issues. See, conceptually in space, you have to distinguish between arms control in space and regulation in space. Okay, the conversations often get confused. So what you do to prevent an arms race in space or is related to, but is different from what you do to regulate what's happening in space. So a very good instance is raised by what Anirudh has said. The capacities that you use for space situational awareness are called space domain awareness when it comes to the military, but it's the same capacities. Okay, it's exactly the same thing. When you use it for military objectives, it's called space domain awareness. Now, when you come to this arms race bit of it, so let's for a moment keep aside the regulation part of it. The problems that we face sometimes intersect. For instance, if you have orbiting debris in space, and debris in lower Earth orbit, I think goes at the speed of something like 30,000 kilometers an hour. Even a fleck hits a satellite, it's gone. All right, so it's a serious issue. windows. Okay. Now, is this a security issue or is this a safety issue? Okay, we believe it's a safety issue, but there are countries which believe that it's a security issue. There's also, as I said, a fierce arms race underway in space. It's determined by how much you can spend, what your technological capacities are, what your ambitions are. And in this, in the effort to contain this arms race, there are two approaches. Essentially, there's one group of countries, principally China and Russia, which say that, this is a process born out of President Reagan's Star Wars initiative, which said that there should not be any weapons in space. That you should not weaponize space. Non-aggressive military uses of space is legal. Okay, so the use of space for military purposes which are non-aggressive in nature is legal. So now there are capacities coming up for space warfare or orbital warfare. Is that legal or is it not legal? These are, say, some of the questions that arise. There is another approach which is sort of championed by the United States, by UK, by the European Union, by many European countries, by Japan and others, which is called the responsible behaviors approach. Now, this is something which is another approach to arms control. It focuses on unintended escalation. So one of the pillars of that is a ban on ASAT testing. We have participated in those conversations as well, like we participate in the conversations on the placement of weapons approach. We believe that the responsible behavior approach has its merits. So we have to work with everyone, and this is we are in for the long haul. Now you talked about how India contributes. The space arms race is a difficult conversation, but let me take you to Vienna for a minute. The long-term sustainability guidelines, which is one of the most important multilateral products that has come up in space, was actually produced by a committee in which India chaired. Okay, so we have a record in bringing about sort of multilateral consensus on these issues. I mean, the last point I'd like to make is that there's an American author called Michael Crippen who writes about space. So he says that whenever there's arms control happening, there are two conversations going on. One is actually about the weapons, the other is about the narrative. And if you are unable to compromise, then the next thing, then the fiercest battle is about who's to blame. All right. As a country like India, which we believe that we are a pole in a multipolar world, and I actually think we are, or we will be very soon. It is important for us not to get sort of taken in by this narrative battle. We believe that all approaches, including responsible behaviors, have its merits. We are glad that Mariolin is here, and we would like to work with them more in developing these ideas. Thank you.
Anirudh, so the private sector has clearly been at the forefront of developing some vital space technologies, right? But it has done so often in close coordination with the government as well. So the IDEX and the Ministry of Defense has a few challenges which they run and announce. So that's how one way the space sector has worked with the government as well. But at the same time, the same companies also work with, say, the US Space Force. So have you seen, or can you speak for the private sector in terms of, are there any challenges when it comes to working with two different set of governments, and how does that impact space security?
So firstly, I think space is global in nature. So as a sector itself, when you start a company within the space industry, you have to be global from day one. You can't be serving one particular market to become a billion-dollar company, because in this sector you also need a lot of funding to start with, which means you need to raise venture capital money or should be funded by the government. So the first step to this approach is to work closely with these defense challenges and few accelerated programs where you get that first foot into the door by working with these government agencies. Secondly, what we've done at Digantra is basically take a different approach where we started to solve for understanding how local regulations work and how can we solve for it locally than focusing on one single company in one particular part of the world. For instance, we have our company based in India, Singapore, and the US. For the US market, we use our US entity to solely focus towards DoD programs and serve for the US military market because the regulatory framework is very different when it comes to space military aspect. So we have American citizens working in our US entity to solve for that problem of Indian company not being able to access US markets directly. That's one part. The second part is mostly on the civil application and the commercial use case side, where again, because the nature of the sector is such that the end customer for every satellite operator today in the world is mostly a government agency, which also brings commercial entities or commercial companies working with another country's company to follow the local government regulations around working with their own company than the outside company. So when we started Digantra, we didn't have a lot of access to the US. While it was easier to work with European companies, it was very difficult to work with the United States because of a lot of export control regulations and paperwork associated with that also impacts timeline on technology development. Having said that, US being the largest market within the space industry for any commercial company, it was very important for us to solve for having an entity there to be able to access a larger portion of the market. So that's how we went about approaching this particular problem. With that, a lot of private companies today, like although they are working on bridge programs like IndusX, where you have India, US coming together, giving a challenge and working on it, it is still not happening at scale where a commercial company can rely on this totally. So it's just a foot into the door, but then you have to figure out yourself. So I personally think that the models that we have today, be it with ISET, IndusX, is not a scalable model, and we've not seen that scale even with IDEX challenge yet, like at least within the space industry, because when you're doing something like this challenge, there needs to be a further roadmap around how can you change this from a challenge to a technology that is adapted for the military or for that particular end user. That adaptation is still a problem. So until we solve for that, you don't see anything happening at scale out of these programs, while you still have to be focused on becoming that one defense contractor who is focused towards solving bigger problems than these smaller challenges.
We have a few minutes left, so I think I have space for one more question. So Ambassador Van Deelen, this is to you. As I said at the beginning of this panel discussion, we're entering an era of astropolitics, highly contested, and a lot will depend on partnerships, alliances, and norms. The EU College of the Commissioners was in India recently, including the EU Commissioner for Defense and Space. They spoke about possibly doing something as a partnership with India. What would collaboration on space security with India look like in the future?
Yeah, indeed. The visit of the College of Commissioners, I think, was a key moment that really shows how the EU is interested in cooperating with India in many, many fields, but including space. And I think space was specifically mentioned at those discussions. I work at the EES, which is the diplomatic and defense arm of the EU. And we cooperate very closely with what's called DG DEFIS of the Commission that runs the EU space program. And the strategy that I mentioned is something that is implemented jointly by the two of us. We would really see merit in coming jointly to India to sit down and to look across all these areas of work, how we can best cooperate with the Indian partners. So as I mentioned, that would look like, as a start, a dialogue where we sit down, speak on many issues related to running space programs, but also to space security. And as you mentioned before, space is a global commons. So as EU, we really believe that we need to solve the challenges we face jointly with other countries. And India would be an excellent partner for that. We also, the way the EU works, when we set up a partnership, it's a partnership. It's based on mutual interest. We're in there for the long haul. We work on it step by step. That is how we operate, and that is what we really like to do in India.
Thank you. With that, we're almost at the end of our time. I guess the main takeaway seems to be that, discussions are ongoing, space is evolving, the tech, the regulation, everything else. All I'll say is I'll close with watch this space. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.